What's up, everyone? Welcome or welcome back to the Marketing Nomad YouTube channel. I am the Marketing Nomad. All right, let's talk about what's been on my mind lately. All right, so a couple of weeks ago, I received a blessing for something that I had prayed for about 5 years ago. All right, and the proof of that blessing was on my laptop. So I was working, and then I saw the proof of my blessing. And it took 5 years for this to come. By the way, I want to put that out there. It took 5 years for this one to come through. And I don't know what happened. I just saw that and then I said, okay, there it is. And then I moved on with the rest of my day. I'm still, kind of processing how I just very calmly, frankly underwhelmed by that blessing coming through. And for a while, I was asking myself, well, was I being ungrateful? Because when I prayed for this, I was in a lot of pain. And to even receive this blessing, I know the journey that it has taken. And there it was, the proof of it on my laptop. And I don't know, maybe when I prayed for this, I imagined that if it did step into my life, I would be jumping with joy or screaming on top of my rooftop or, I don't know, doing something at least, not saying, oh, okay, there it is, and then moving on with the rest of my life or the rest of my day. And I started thinking a lot about this. I was like, okay, what was that reaction? Why am I reacting that way? Am I being ungrateful? And so these were the thoughts that I started having, and this kind of triggered those thoughts. So that was a couple of weeks ago. Then a few days after that, all right, I was thinking about something, and I was like, okay, well, that's something that I would want in the future. Right? And I just said that to myself, and I said, and immediately the thought that followed was, oh, but by the time it comes into my life, yeah, I would be maybe nonchalant about it. And then I realized that those were two separate incidents, but there's actually a connecting thought that ties both of them together. So let's get into the first incident, all right? And then we'll get into the second one. And even that, I was like, well, the second incident, I was like, something's off about the way that you are perceiving this. Because the way I said it was, oh, okay, but by the time it comes, I will probably be nonchalant about it. I wouldn't want it, that desperation for it. It wouldn't be as much as it is today. And I was kind of feeling a little bit down about that. But a few days of thinking over this, I realized that these two separate incidents were actually connected. And I wanted to share my thought process because it's been a while and I've been thinking so deeply about this. And I have understood such a deep layer to this that it's brought me a lot of peace. And I want to share that with you, all right? Okay, so the first incident, let's take that into consideration. The first incident is what I've come to realize is when we ask for something, all right, whether it is higher power, divine power, whatever it is that you believe in, whatever it is that you ask the universe, however you wish to perceive it. So when we ask for something, what I've come to realize is we are not actually asking for the end point. We are asking for the journey to get to that end point. We are asking for the path as well as the transformation that is meant to happen within us to get to a point where we align with the end point. So when we ask for something, the journey is actually what we are asking for. And oftentimes when we ask for something, there's often this recurring thought, that happens in our mind, like, okay, why hasn't it come just yet? Why hasn't it come? Why am I going through all of this that I'm going through? And why can't it just land, at my doorstep or in my lap? Why do I have to go through this entire process? And what I've come to understand is when we perceive what we're asking for as the end point, I think that we're constantly in the waiting energy, like, where is it? Why hasn't it come yet? What's happening? And when we perceive what we ask for as the journey, the joys, the lows, the pain of the transformation, the relief after the transformation, the thoughts that we grow into, the feelings that we unlock, the version of ourselves that we unlock, when we perceive what we ask for as the journey, I think that it becomes that much more smoother for us to go through the process to get to the end point that we've asked for. And when I look back at the pattern of my life, every time I've asked for something, I have embarked on perhaps a very, very painful process, transformation, to get to that point. And by the time it has stepped into my life, it has become a very natural progression of the version of myself that I stepped into. And that is also probably why there was a sense of, okay, here it is. Because I've already reached that state of being. And I think that that is also the core of manifestation, don't you think? That when we are in the feeling of want, of desperation, it doesn't come to us. When we are in the state of being as if it were already present within ourselves or within our lives, that is when it appears, or that is us manifesting it into our life. And so I feel like whatever we ask for, I think that we are actually receiving the journey of feeling as if it has already happened, as well as becoming a version of ourselves where we inherently know that it's there or it's coming. And so my feeling of saying, oh, okay, there it is, it wasn't that I was ungrateful. It was just my state of being. All right. And when I look back at the journey of 5 years that it took for this particular blessing to come through, I realized that first off, I have grown massively because of this one ask. All right. I've grown as a person. My thoughts, my feelings have evolved. The version of myself that I was forced to let go in order to step into this version of myself, the joys, the mini joys that I felt along the way, the little bits of progress. If I focus on tapping into the emotions of what happened during the journey, I find myself feeling a lot more fulfilled, a lot more content, rather than tapping into the final feeling of that end point. Because by the time the end point comes along, what's happened is you've already gone through the highs, the extreme highs and the lows. You've kind of unpacked all of those emotions, those highs, those lows. You've unpacked it along the way in a way that you can handle it as well. So by the time you get to that end point, what I have understood is you've already exhausted all of that desperation, all right? And you no longer have that desperation, which would have created that extreme high of achieving that end point. So all of that desperation kind of is pushed out of you through the journey. And when you are in that journey, because there's still desperation that you're holding on, there will be certain highs, certain feelings that you can tap into along the way. All right. But once that desperation is completely out of you, it then just becomes a state of being. And when that appears in your life, the end point, whatever it is that you've asked for, it just becomes a part of who you are, the energy that you are in, which is why you don't get that extreme high anymore. All right. So understanding that was very important for me. So that was like a reframing that no, I'm not being ungrateful. It's just I have reached that state of being that this is now a part of my energy and I already know it. Deep down, I already know it. So it's not me being ungrateful. It's just that I've had the journey to get to this point. And for me, the journey is what created the emotions that I wanted to experience, or even through the transformation that I had to go through, that by itself created the experience that I actually wanted to feel. Right? So that was the first incident. And that's how I was like, okay, yeah, no, I'm not being ungrateful. Because sometimes I feel like when we receive our blessings, we're like, why aren't I happy about this? Or why aren't I happier about this? I thought that when I received this, or when I would receive this, I would be a lot more happy, or I would be, jumping with joy. But the thing is, that extreme emotion is indirectly proportionate to the desperation that you feel. All right. So because at the start of your journey, your desperation level is high, what you imagine the end point to be also will be high. However, as the journey goes, the core of manifestation is that you should let go of that feeling of desperation. And even if you're doing this consciously or not consciously, I think that the universe has its own way of eliminating that desperation out of you so that it becomes your state of being. Right? And that is the journey, that is the process. So by the time you get to the end, the desperation is zero. It's completely out of you, which is why even the emotions that you feel at the end point is minimal, or it is just there. It is part of your being. It's not an extreme high that you feel anymore. Right? And did I say indirectly proportional? I meant directly proportional. It's directly proportional. What we feel, all right, what we think we are going to feel is directly proportional to the desperation. Yes. All right. So by the time we get to the end point, the desperation's out. It's completely over. All right. It's out of us because that is the state of being that we are meant to step into, which is why we will not feel that extreme high at the end point. It doesn't mean that we're ungrateful. It's just that it has become our state of being. And that by itself, I would consider as a success, right? That wraps up, because if there is still that desperation when you reach the end point, it means you have not become a version of yourself that can handle that blessing. And more often than not, and it's happened to me, you will end up losing it. You will end up messing things up, or it's not going to feel aligned even if it does step into your life, because you're not ready yet. There's still that desperation within you. So there's tendencies to mess it up. There's tendencies to overthink it. There's tendencies to act on the desperation that's still there rather than it being your state of being, rather than, making decisions from your center or your calm point. All right. So that is one way to look at it. Then let's talk about the second incident that I was, thinking about, like, oh, okay, by the time it comes, I'll probably not want it, or it's just going to be, I'm not going to feel that high. And so I realized that these two separate incidents were actually connected, and it was my thought process that needed, a little bit of tweaking. It's not that I need to look forward to the high at the end. I have to look forward to the journey by itself, regardless of how painful it may be at some point in times, because there is an actual transformation, right? You have to become a version of yourself that aligns with the frequency of what you have asked for. And sometimes, yes, it is going to be painful. Yes, you are going to go through those extreme highs, those extreme lows in order to get to that end point. What if I, instead of focusing on the feeling that I want to feel at the end point, what if I focus on all of the feelings that I will be going through on this journey? What if I start getting excited about the journey and not the end point? And so that was a little bit of a reframing that I kind of understood with this thought process, that naturally I will not feel that high at the end point because the desperation is completely out of me. So at the starting point, I cannot say, oh, I'm waiting for the high at the end point. I can't say that anymore because I know this. I know this about the journey. I know that when I get to the end point, I will not be in that extreme high because the desperation's out of me. So what do I look forward to then? I look forward to the journey because when I ask for something, I'm not technically asking for the end point. I am asking for the journey. I am asking for a version of me to get into that state of being so that I can receive that blessing. So if I focus on the journey, if I focus on the highs and the lows that come about, including, yes, the difficult emotions that come through, if I learn to accept and feel those along the way and take those to be a blessing, then that would give me the satisfaction that I was looking for at the end point. But instead, I'm actually going to be feeling it along the way. All right? So this was one thing, because it's true, you have to be aligned to the frequency of what you are asking for. You have to be in a state of being. You attract what you are. If you are in that desperate energy, you will attract something that's half baked. So oftentimes, especially when there is a delay in what you are asking for, and for me, it took 5 years. It took 5 years of tremendous, tremendous transformation. That's why I was so shocked at my reaction, because this is something that I have cried for. I have cried nights for. I have prayed so hard. There have been moments where, I just slumped against the wall and I was like, why? Why is there so much of pain in order for me to get to that end point? Why can't it just come? And when it did step into my life, my reaction was, okay, there it is. And then I just went about my day. Compared to the deep emotional experiences and also like the physical experiences that I'd gone through to get this blessing, I was like, that does not make sense to me. Why is there such a contrast? But when I look back at the journey instead and take it that I asked for that journey, first off, I make peace with the pain and the transformation that I had to go through. I make peace with the extreme lows that I had to get through to get to the end point. And I guess it also makes me feel like, yes, I asked for it. So I was in control of my entire experience. At any given point, I could have said, no, I don't want it anymore. I'm walking away from this. But no, I asked for it. I asked for the end point. So I cannot complain about the journey that was created only for me to get to that point. All right, so that's also one more way of, just understanding that, okay, I'm going to get excited about the journey, not about the end point. Because if you think about it energy-wise, you are not. If you are, reaching that state of being where you're fully able to handle that blessing, you will not feel that extreme high. All right, so I'm not going to focus on that anymore. I'm going to focus on the journey. All right, I'm going to get excited about the journey. Yes, nervous as well because, well, there's going to be a few bumps along the way, but I am going to primarily focus on being excited about the journey. I'm going to be curious about the journey. If I cannot be excited about the journey, maybe I'm going to be curious about the journey. Maybe I'm going to take it one step at a time. I'm going to fully feel every step of the journey rather than waiting for the high at the end. All right, so these are my thoughts about these two separate incidents. I realized that, hey, they're actually connected and I need to reframe my thoughts about both of them. But the core idea of both of these incidents and the thought that I needed to shift into, it was the same. It's that the end point, don't berate yourself. Why am I not happier about this? I prayed so much. And like I said, I went through that entire thought process as well. And I said, no, this is not me being ungrateful. In fact, it is a success that I just said, okay, there it is. And then I moved on with whatever it was that I was doing. I was working on my laptop. So I literally went into other aspects. That by itself is the success because I reached that state of being where I'm able to handle that blessing and I'm able to think with a calm, clear mind about my next steps with respect to the blessing. And I think that just maximizes my success or the potential of my success to handle that blessing or to sustain that blessing. So that by itself was the success, but you're not going to be able to tap into the extreme high that I thought I would have when I got to that point. So just understanding it this perspective, which is also why it's important to celebrate your milestones on the journey, not just the end point as well. Because most of the times the end point, yes, you have to be very conscious about it. You have to, let yourself feel good at the end. And we'll talk about this in another episode. I do want to, I do have a few thoughts about this, about, the end point being a point where you actually take time to feel the journey, to feel the transformation that's happened, to feel the growth that's happened within you. So we'll talk about that in another episode. But I also feel like when you start looking as, okay, what I asked for, yes, it may be the end point, but actually what I'm asking for is the journey, you'll start feeling every part of the journey. You will start recognizing different milestones, and you'll start tapping into the energy of each of those milestones rather than that one big high that you thought you would get when you got to the end point. So it's all of these little sparks that you're going to get along the way, which I also feel is part of the blessing as well. All right. So this is where I will leave you for today. It's a little bit of, I've been thinking a lot about this. I'm going to think some more about this as well. So if you have any thoughts about this, definitely let me know in the comment section below. Just that, yes, it's intense, the thoughts. But at the same time, I feel like it's making sense to me. And I feel like it's shifting the way that I look at what I ask for. I'm no longer looking at the end point. I'm like, okay, yes, that is the end point that I'm asking for, but I'm technically asking for the journey. I'm technically asking for the transformation within me, right? So I'm going to take that as what I need to tap into, the energy that I need to feel along the way. So that by itself, and that way, I'm not thinking about the end point as, oh, okay, by the time it comes, I'll probably not feel this way, or I won't feel that high that I'm looking for. No, what if I took the mini bursts along the journey? What if I started tapping into those energies? What if I get excited about that? Or if I can't get excited, because sometimes, yes, it gets scary, what if I get curious about it? What if I truly live every single experience, whether it is the highs or the lows, the pain, the joy, sometimes the frustration, the anger? What if I take that to be a blessing, that I'm able to feel that spectrum of emotions along the way, rather than that one high that I thought I would receive at the end? Right? So that is my thought process. Definitely let me know your thought processes about this. And yes, I'm definitely going to think a lot more about this. If I have any more additional thoughts about this, I'll definitely, share it with you as well, as and when it kind of clicks to me as well. Or if maybe there's at some point in the future, all of this has kind of combined and come into one nice little package, then yes, I will also share that with you. All right. So this is where I will leave you for today. I really hope that it gave you a starting point to maybe think about your own perception with what you've asked for and what you've received, and the energy that you were in when you received, your thought processes about what you are asking for as well. All right. So this is where I will leave you for today. I really hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, please do give me a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, because that tells you every single time I do upload a YouTube video. Take care, and I'll catch you in my next one. Bye-bye.